We're going to call this chapter, If I Were You, I'd Be Like. So this chapter speaks on being surrounded by people who don't see me for who I am. And rather than getting to know or understand me and accept me, what I've experienced over and over again is people trying to make me do what they believe I should be doing based off of how they view me, not how I am. When this first happened to me when I was much younger, I'd often feel like maybe if I listened to what's being said, that it would enhance some part of my life somehow. So I felt as if behind me or behind my back, people would pick me apart, but in my face, they'd act nice and pretend that they liked who I was. So what they would try to do, my family included, would try to steer me away from who I really am because they didn't understand it or didn't like it, and then try to insert what they thought should have been a better version of myself. And I want to say this properly, in many ways, it was enacted by force over and over again, because oftentimes people look at the surface and think that you're headed nowhere, when in fact, you're very intentional about who you are, what you want, what you're looking for, how you're going to develop yourself. So this was a repeating cycle. And, I always knew where I wanted to be, but I knew that where I wanted to end up meant that I had to draw from multiple corners that don't actually align together. And for some people in some societies, they think that A and B can't mix, C and D can't mix, nobody does this, this is not normal, this won't be successful. But in my world, all the things that look like they can't go together can make music in life, right? So while I was being forced on many angles from many people throughout my whole life to be a certain way, go a certain way, do a certain way, act like this, dress like this, talk like this. If you want to be part of this group, you have to be like this. I was always like, no, 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 no. So I accepted who I was, but I just couldn't understand why people couldn't accept me for who I am. And constantly I was bombarded with setups. It could have been teachers, it could have been employers, it could have been neighbors, anybody. I always encountered this in my life where a specific image or behavior was projected onto me, and this is not who I am. And then, of course, then comes this person is so weird. But no, it's not weird. I know who I am, and I know what I want, how I'm going to do. I'm a free spirit. I can do what I want. People don't comprehend that. So here are some examples of going through this process of, let me insert a different persona for you. So, when I was going around networking and meeting different people in the music scene, there was someone who was building his franchise and he wanted me to work with them. And I was open to it to understand what it was he was looking for. But what I noticed is he would constantly test me to try to see if I will do what he wants. And I'm a free agent. I'm a free person. I could do what I want, right? So I'll never forget when he asked me to go to a site check to go look at a venue for some event he was doing. And I actually had a job. So I had a place to be. And when I declined that I wouldn't be going, he got upset. But I realized, wow, I've been through this before. where people are trying to force me to be a certain way in order to be accepted with whatever they're doing or whatever their crew or group is, and I declined. Another example of people trying to force you to be something that you're not is, when I've had friends over the course of my life where they would live vicariously through me. So I had a friend, she maybe would start talking to somebody and she knew they weren't interested. So then she would try to push me and send me there to talk to him. This is in my early 20s. And I remember her saying, if I had your body or if I looked like you, I would probably be doing XYZ, XYZ. And I was like, well, why would I do anything different than who I am? I'm like, my life isn't shaped by what people see. My life is shaped by my personal experiences, which have been pretty harsh, pretty crazy, and has nothing to do with my looks. That's another example. Another example is, my interest in wanting to DJ in Toronto again. For a few years ago, I really wanted to, but I was surrounded by a group who felt that in order to do something, you got to look a certain way. And they try to like shape your persona to also be a certain way, which was weird. It was creepy, because, you're in charge of yourself and your branding and how you show up in the world. And the way that they wanted me to show up, by the suggestion of the flyer they created, it was like that weird, that weird projection of like a black girl with an afro looking really sexy. And that might be what I look like. I don't know. But I know for me on the inside, that's not something I would project to the public. So I felt like they were trying to capitalize off of what they thought people would like. Whereas if people knew that I was actually smart, or they knew that I had an experience and background in music and media, they would probably be more intrigued about what I have to offer. So I remember them setting it up, and the venue that they set it up at was empty. And they kept saying, we'll be paying you money, and trying to force me to do things and thinking that money is the thing that's going to move me. And it did not. It absolutely did not. Another thing my stepmom used to do is she would make suggestions of what I should be doing. And I think it's because, she comes from a traditional background where, you go to school, you do an applied science degree, you become a nurse, you get married, you settle down, you have kids. And I was like, but we were made to shake the table and disrupt the world, disrupt the industry by doing something different. And I've always known that I'm going to be something or do something different. And, you have to push yourself to achieve that difference rather than falling back to what people always do. And so she kept suggesting, you should sell real estate. You should open up a daycare. Maybe you can have a business cooking or a cafe. It's like all this stuff that wasn't my interest. And so it was a lot of pressure to try to just hear what's being said and let it ride, let it roll off. Another year, I remember my mom and my dad, they called me to their place in Brampton, and they wanted to have, I called it a staged intervention. And with this intervention, what they wanted was to tell me, like, you got your degree in university, you were living in Japan, you taught English in Japan, you should go to teacher's college. And I remember going, why? And they were like, well, we think that that's the practical path. And this is two people who don't even know anything about me, right? And, my mother said, if you go to teacher's college, we'll pay for it. But if you're going to go to school for PR, which I was paying for myself, then we won't help you. And I was just like, you just want to be a teacher so you can have summers off and you can just chill. But I actually want to build my career. I'm choosing something off the beaten path. So you may not see a future for me, but I see a future for me. And, you know, over and over again, I went through this cycle and I realized there's specific types of people I had around me that wanted to create a persona for me or create a character for me. And I realized very late, like, I cannot be around people like this who do not understand who I am, what I'm trying to build, what I'm trying to create. And I definitely will have a hard time achieving what I'm trying to achieve if I have this around me. So there came a point where I started to ask myself, where are all the soul-centered people I need who understand the process of becoming and where that kind of energy is at? I wanted to know, because being assigned a persona that these randoms were forcing on me, I started to see everybody as randoms. Being around these randoms, I started to feel like I'm just seeing everyone as like one-dimensional. And believe it or not, when I started to distance myself from all these types of people and energies, this is when the stalking started. So a lot of people who were treating me this way didn't like when I decided to pull away and just move away from what they were pushing on me. So over the course of the next few weeks, I'll talk about my experience with stalking. The stalking started as far back as 2011 or 2012. And it took me many years to realize I was being followed. I was being followed to work. I was being followed to my job. I was being followed when I would go out to public spaces. And if you scroll back to previous postings, I mentioned it in a very surface way. But the following and the stalking became overwhelming for me. And I've never experienced anything, I've never consciously experienced anything like that in my life that I knew of. But now that I look back, I realize it's been happening for a very long time. And I'm very grateful that I survived that. So I'll make sure I share that in my next voice snippet. And you'll be hearing about this or reading about this in my book. And thank you for tuning in for these, because these are a lot of fun for me to present. Thank you.